Hi, I'm Ed Chung. Again, I don't know if you saw my intro video to this series of these videos, which I'm going to talk about Meniere's disease and its course and its treatment and its diagnosis. It's going to be, again, a series of videos broken into 8 different videos to hopefully provide some extra help or information to other people, other sufferers, other family members, or anybody who's interested in Meniere's disease. And this is the first video of 8. By all means, feel free to skip ahead to the other sections, which again, I've provided a little description as to what each individual video of these 8 videos describes, and perhaps it'll give you a little more information. And again, I'm a person who has Meniere's. At the same time, I am a physician who's been practicing for over 15 years, and actually 18 years now. And I think I can provide a little extra clarity or help with this disease. So, by all means, I'm going to start out with, if you do suffer from Meniere's or know someone who does, I completely empathize with you. Again, this video 1 is going to be just a narrative of my personal experiences and with the Meniere's disease and how it affects me and how I've been able to manage it. You have to understand that each Meniere's disease sufferer may have different symptoms with different time courses and different severities. So what I'm going to talk about here in this first video is just my Meniere's disease, which may not be applicable to yours or to someone you know. So I'm going to start out with this. I got diagnosed with Meniere's disease in June of 2010. It started probably a few days after I took my daughter to a swim party, and after that I think I developed a little upper respiratory cold, just didn't quite feel right. And all of a sudden, I remember on the Sunday, it was June the 22nd, I started developing severe tinnitus, or ringing in my right ear. On top of that, I felt like there was some fullness and stuffiness. I felt just really awful, and I just couldn't concentrate, I couldn't think, I just felt really tired and fatigued. And along with the tinnitus, I started to notice that my hearing on the right ear just wasn't quite correct. Over the next few days, the ringing developed, it progressed and it became even worse. It never went away, whether I was sleeping or awake or when I was listening to music or not listening to anything. But it was especially worse when I was in the quiet room with nothing else going on and no sound. So I called my ear, nose, and throat doctor, who actually has been following me for many years, just because I do have a history of some mild sinus infections and sinusitis. And on top of that, he did do some prior sinus surgery on my left side, but again, all my symptoms are on the right. And he asked me to come into the hospital as soon as I could to get a hearing study, and he immediately put me on a short course of high-dose prednisone. So I was put on about 60 milligrams of prednisone a day for about 5 days or a week, which, I'll be honest with you, from what I remember, it did not really help much with the symptoms. It did not really make me feel any better. All it did was make me feel a little more antsy, jittery, give me a little insomnia. The hearing study actually showed that I actually had some low-frequency hearing loss on the right ear. And however, I did not have any vertigo with this. I did not have any dizziness. Had a little bit of nausea. Again, I did not feel well. And with those constellation of symptoms, I was diagnosed with Meniere's disease. But further studies were done. Again, over the next following weeks, I just was not feeling well. I still developed a little bit more worsening hearing loss and worsening tinnitus. In addition to that, I just started feeling a little bit of nausea and just not necessarily spinning, but just a sensation that the world was moving around me. I eventually had it's called an Acog Study, which is I'm going to describe more later in other videos, and they diagnosed the Meniere's with that. So it's an evoked potential study. Since that time in June of 2010, my hearing loss has been permanent. However, it fluctuates. So my hearing goes up and down between perhaps maybe 10% to 20% loss, all the way sometimes down to like 50 to 60, 70% hearing loss just on the right ear. I have permanent, pretty much low frequency hearing loss on this right side, and I have constant tinnitus and ringing in the ear since then. It never goes away. However, the level of ringing goes up and down. At the same time last year in July of last year, I was trying to train for a triathlon, a mini triathlon actually, and I actually finished and completed it because, again, I just had hearing loss and tinnitus, but no real true full amounts of vertigo, and my symptoms would fluctuate up and down since then. Well, after that, in about September, after I finished my second mini triathlon, I was training pretty hard and I was working pretty hard. I mean, I work pretty long hours and I do a lot of overnight shifts, which interrupt my sleep. I started developing severe, actually nausea and vertigo in September of last year. It was just persistent, almost daily, very tiring, just movement. It makes you almost feel like you're floating on a boat. And at work, especially with the stress at work, and also with the fatigue and the sleep, things got very, very severe and a lot worse, to the point where I actually started developing in October, November, a few called drop attacks, where I would actually fall to the floor. I knew it was coming. It wasn't like a sudden onset, but I knew within an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours beforehand, I just started having increasing amounts of ringing in the right ear, severe worsening amount of deafness. Sometimes the ringing would go to the other ear, and in addition, I would start feeling the spinning sensation like I was on the boat would get worse and worse and worse, to the point where I would literally have to be lying on the floor for about 3 or 4 hours, having the sensation or motion that I was literally tumbling forward, like I guess the best way to describe it would be like on a roller coaster. You're falling forward, and it never stops. It wouldn't go away. Luckily, these little episodes, these drop attacks, would last maybe about 3 hours to maybe 8 hours, 3 to 6 hours, 3 hours. I'd heavily sedate myself with multiple different medications, which I will describe in the next few videos as far as medications I take. But I took scopolamine patch, which actually I'm wearing right now, Ativan. I tried the meclizine, which I didn't find very helpful, and Zofran, which helps with the nausea. And then these little attacks would pass, and then usually what would happen is my hearing would open up, and I'd start feeling better. And following those quote drop attacks, where I'd literally lie on the floor vomiting and just feeling awful, feeling like I'm going to die, the symptoms would suddenly relieve and open up for the next few days. I started acupuncture treatment and herbal medicine because I in the meantime, in the past, from June, July, August, September, October of 2010, I saw multiple and wrote to multiple different specialists. I talked to my primary ear, nose, and throat doctor, but along with that, I saw a specialist in San Diego at UCSD, and also with my health plan. I talked to and wrote and emailed, communicated with multiple other ENT physicians who wrote books on Meniere's and balance. In addition, I had an outside consultation with a physician at UCLA who specializes in balance, and every single Western physician basically diagnosed me with Meniere's disease and said unfortunately there was nothing much they can really offer, except for that I would have to continue taking a very low salt diet, and I would have to take this daily Maxide or hydrochlorothiazide, which is a mild water diuretic that sort of keeps a lot of the sodium levels off your body and fluid. And I was very religious about keeping a very low salt diet, taking that Maxide, not drinking any caffeine. I switched my overall health in that I made sure I had plenty of sleep. I backed off on work. But despite all these things, I still had persistent symptoms, and that were somewhat annoying and constant. And so I started acupuncture and herbal treatment in September, October of 2010, which I, you know, the Western medicine specialist, every single one I've talked to, sort of, I wouldn't say poo-poo it, but they don't really recommend it, and they can't really say that it does anything for the acupuncture. However, from my internal standpoint and how I felt, I did feel a lot better, and the drop attacks and the recurrent symptoms and the deafness and the tinnitus actually did improve. And I did have a few more drop attacks in February of 2011, but then actually I slowly built up I felt like my internal strength, and I was able to exercise regularly. I was able to actually go back to work full time. I actually started feeling overall better. Like the morning I wake up with with the Meniere's, and the cloudiness would actually sort of, that fog would sort of lift. And April, May, and June, I actually did very, very, very well with the acupuncture and the herbal medicine. I'd go to acupuncture probably about once a week to once every 2 weeks. Again, the effects of the acupuncture are very short term. They only lasted a few days, but they did help clear up a lot of the symptoms. It was mainly, I think, the herbal medicine that sort of built up my strength, and it helped me feel better. However, of course, when patients, and I have to be guilty of this even though I'm a physician, when they feel better and they do well, they often change their habits back to where they were used to. In addition to that, they come off their medicines. And so I'll admit, in June of this past year, I sort of stopped taking the herbal medicines. I backed down on the herbal medicines because they are a little bit pricey. Not too bad, but they're a little pricey. In addition to that, I stopped doing the acupuncture once a week to once every other week. I backed down to, every once in a while. And I'll admit, I probably did not watch my diet very well. I went to 2 weddings, I went to another party. Of course, there's, end of the year parties and July 4th parties. And I have to say, maybe I did not sleep as well, playing with the iPad at night and things like that. So after that, I started getting severe drop attacks again, and severe recurrent symptoms in July and August of this year, just passed, just a month ago. And I had a total of probably about 4, 5, 6 drop attacks in the last July to August, which is sort of cycling through things. Again, so I'd wake up in the morning, I'd feel very persistently nauseous, I don't feel well, I'd have stuffiness and fullness in the right ear, I'd have severe deafness and tinnitus and ringing, again, I went to go see a bunch more specialists. I saw another specialist at the House Ear Institute in Los Angeles. I saw another ENT physician who specializes in Meniere's at my health plan, and he actually sees a lot of patients, and he didn't really have much to offer. So again, I started increasing. I changed my herbal acupuncturist and actually went to another more senior teacher who's also an internal medicine physician and also an acupuncture herbal medicine physician, and put me on these new herbs. And I've been going to acupuncture about once a week. Again, starting in end of August, mid end of August, and again, I'm starting to feel better, do better. However, I still wake up at times, or even today, I woke up, I still have a little bit of vertigo. The whole world and everything's moving a little bit. I have a moderate amount to severe amount of tinnitus and ringing in this right ear. And there's a little bit of a fog that's there when I wake up in the morning, but it luckily clears. Another thing that, along with the herbs and the acupuncture, that I do have to say that it's helped immensely in the past 2 months that I've had, again, the flare of those Meniere's, is that I've been actually taking some 0.5 milligram to 1 milligram of Ativan every night, every other night, or if not taking Ativan, taking melatonin and making sure I had plenty of sleep. So this is where I am right now. It's mid-September of 2011, and the next few videos, this was my Meniere's disease. This is how it affected me and my symptoms and how I've done. And in the next following 7 videos, this is the first video, I'm going to describe more about Meniere's itself, and hopefully give you a little more information about that. Thanks for listening.